Well, welcome to another episode of SKST Radio, and you tuned into the Cammie Grayson Show. And I have a very special guest with me today. He goes by the name of Paul Weisser. And did I pronounce that last name correctly?
No, actually, it's pronounced Weiser as if it were W-I-S.
Wiser.
Yeah.
Okay, I knew I was going to mess it up. I should have asked you that from the beginning. But thank
Okay.
you, Paul, and welcome to the show. I mean, my God, I am so impressed with your background, and I mean, you're a scholar. I mean, I'm looking at Einstein behind you, and I'm thinking, wow, this man knows his stuff. This man has a lot going on. So tell people who you are and what you do.
Okay. I'm amused by watching my resume go by at the bottom of the screen. That's kind of fun. Anyway, I'm a writer, editor, desktop publisher. And the desktop publisher is the part when people self-publish their books. And I've done about 50 of those. But
Wow.
I do both academic and creative projects. So I've done more than 120 doctoral dissertations over the decades on the academic side, edited about 60 books for University of California Press, Stanford University, another 20, Oxford and Cornell University presses, Sierra Club books, a whole bunch of academic presses, and then a whole bunch of commercial presses, Harper Collins, and so on. So, about 20 years ago, maybe 30 by now, I lose track. I
Hmm.
stopped working for the publishers and I started working for individual writers. And so
Okay.
people come to me with screenplays, novels, memoirs, doctoral dissertations, master's theses, poetry, newsletters, you name it. Anything that's requiring words, that's what they come with.
Oh,
Sometimes it's
wow.
a letter of appeal or something like that,
Hmm.
That's to an application. But the big three would be doctoral dissertations on the academic side, screenplays, novels, and memoirs on the creative side.
So, Paul, how did you get started? I mean, do you just like writing and reading, or how did this spark off for you?
It's very interesting. When I was back in high school, they gave us an aptitude test, and it said I should be a writer. And at that time, I wanted to be a psychoanalyst. And when I went to college, I actually majored in chemistry at first, and I thought I was going to go to medical school and all that. But I changed all that. And interestingly enough, I've become a writer. But I went through a transition. I was a professor of dramatic art
Hmm.
and at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And my first marriage came to an end, and I wound up very depressed from that. I went off to Europe, thinking I was just going for a few months. And I wound up spending 3.5 years in Europe. First, I went to what used to be called Yugoslavia. Doesn't exist anymore. Why I went there, you could ask me if you want later. And
Okay.
I ended up working for a film studio there, major animated film and documentary film studio there. And
Okay.
after a couple of years there, I moved to England, worked for a couple of animated film studios in London. And so I was working as a screenwriter and a screen editor. And I did that for about 3.5 years. One of the films I worked on in London won the Academy Award for animation, and way back in
Oh,
1975. And finally, it was time to come home. I was starting to miss people. And so I
hmm.
came home, and I actually worked for a film studio in Hollywood for a little while, Walper Productions. And they did Chico and the Man, and they did Roots,
I
and
remember that.
they did the Olympics every year, every 4 years. And anyway, they decided eventually to go like every other studio, rather than having a brain center, of which I was the newest member. They were
Hmm.
going to do projects from agents like everybody else. So that was the end of that, and I was out of that. And there I am in Hollywood, which I didn't much enjoy. And people were asking me if I would do master's theses and doctoral dissertations, and I was helping people with that. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, what am I doing in Los Angeles? I didn't even like Los Angeles. I go back to Berkeley, which I loved. So I did, and after a few months of editing people's stuff, a Korean guy, called me. Would I edit his doctoral dissertation? I said, sure.
Okay.
He said, do the first 5 pages, and I'll bring it to the editor in chief at University of California Press in Berkeley. And if he likes it, I'll hire you. So, of course, I did my very best work, which I always do anyway. But I looked at the thing over and over and over and over again because I knew it was going to the editor-in-chief at UC Press. And it worked out just the way I hoped, because the editor at UC Press said to the guy, when he finishes working for you, tell him he can come work for us.
Oh,
So,
my goodness.
yeah, once I had University of California Press as a client, then I got Stanford, Sierra Club Books, and so on, all those others I named before.
Mm-hmm.
That for about 10 or 15 years. I had a few private clients, but mostly it was presses. And then I gradually went over to working with individuals, which is actually a lot more fun.
No. I was going to ask you, what's the difference?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, what's the difference? Do you enjoy working for the individuals, or it seemed like to me working for the major literature companies would be like very exciting?
Well, it had its exciting side, but that was back in the day when I edited with a thing called a pencil. I don't know. Can you see this here? That was my primary tool back there, aside from my brain. And that was before computers. And then once computers came in, I remember a physicist friend of mine say, you ought to get into word processing. And I thought, word processing? It sounds like chopping up vegetables. God, that's awful. Now, of course, I'm totally dependent on word processing, and I totally love it. But I got into that, and all of my clients at that time were still sitting right next to me in my office. My main office is upstairs. I'm sitting in an office downstairs that used to be my young son's bedroom.
Oh,
And I'll tell you, as a side note, the reason I'm here, one of my clients decided at that point, temporarily, he decided he was going to give away all his wealth.
okay.
And so he gave me for free about $5,000 worth of computers and monitors. And so a Macintosh monitor and Macintosh computer, I'm looking at it right now as I talk to you. So I put those in my son's bedroom, and then I decided, what do I want to walk up 14 steps all the time? I'm getting older. It looks like an opportunity to fall down the stairs. Why don't I just stay downstairs in my son's bedroom with these? And I've been doing that for the past couple of years.
Nice.
I see Superman and Einstein behind me.
That's you, yeah. It's like, that's incredible. I'm like, I love the Einstein portrait back there. And then you got Superman, and he's like really buff.
Yeah, right. I decorated this room for my son when he was about 5.
Wow.
Now he's 31. Anyway, I interrupted my story. I guess I was telling you how I got to work with private clients. So at that time, they were all sitting next to me in my office upstairs. And when the internet came in, I guess the first one was a client who was here, and then he became a professor at a university in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And we worked on the phone, and he wanted to stay with me, still work with me because he liked me as an editor. So we worked on the phone, and that was okay. But, if I were doing a lot of changes, he'd be saying, are you still there? Are you still, and it was kind of annoying. But when the internet came in, and people could see me and hear me, and I could share my screen, then they could see the manuscript on the screen from home. They didn't have to come to my house anymore. So when COVID came around, most of my clients were already working with me from home. So actually, most people's business went down. Mine actually went up. Because
I can imagine.
People went home and thought, well, this is a good time to write that novel or that memoir or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So the business actually went up with COVID for a while.
Wow.
I have clients all over the place. They're all over the country and outside the country, as far away as Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
And New Zealand, South America. They're all over.
So now this is like your life. This is all you do, huh? Are you not gonna retire and relax some, or this is
the average American male dies within 2 years of retiring. I have no desire to retire. Now, life may retire me. My body may retire me at some point. I hope not. But my dream is to fall over dead at my computer. I mean it. But I never want to retire.
Oh, well, that's good, though. That's good, because it keeps you going.
How old do you think I am?
I want to say you are probably...
It just went by on the scroll. It just went by the year I was born.
So 73.
Well, you can add 11 to that.
What?
I'm 84.
Oh my gosh. Paul, you don't look like it.
No, that's what people tell me.
Oh
No,
my goodness.
my legs are a little numb, but my mind's alert, and I'm as good as ever working with clients. I love it.
Oh, I bet. I bet. So now, have you ever had a client that didn't know how to write at all and you had to really help them?
Oh yeah, I've had clients at every level of writing. When I was still doing academic stuff for the presses, one of my clients was the Institute of East Asian Studies on the campus of UC Berkeley.
Mhm.
And their books all came from writers in Asia, so from China and Vietnam and whatever, Japan and so on. And sometimes I'd be down to 1 page an hour. Back in the
Wow.
pencil day, I didn't have the client with me at all, just me and the manuscript. And I'd have trouble trying to figure out what they were saying, just on a clarity basis, Did you mean this? Did you mean that? So I had little post-it notes all up and down and across asking questions. Did you mean this? Did you mean that? And it would be real slow. But most of the clients I have these days speak pretty good English. So I average anywhere between 3 and 10 double-spaced pages an hour.
Wow. That's amazing.
Not too many at 10, I'll tell you. Most people are around 5, 6, 7, double-spaced.
That's amazing.
Another
You know,
thing, yeah, go ahead.
I was about to say I have 2 books out, but I don't really call them books. They're more of I want to say a literature guide type book.
Yeah,
And one of them was actually my stage play that I turned into a book. And so I use that actually as the program. You know how you get the playbills
yeah,
at the plays? I used
right.
my book as the playbill
Uh-huh.
and did really well with that book. And I ended up having the characters sign the book for the audience, and so it was very good. And so, but my goal is to, I have more books in me, right? So I want to get them out. And but how do you get that push to get it back out? It's kind of like you're going. But what about the person that's just how have you seen that the shooting gun and then one person going
Right.
I'm that.
Well, you raised a question I was about to address, I think. Artificial intelligence came along. And about 5 years ago, if somebody had, especially with a memoir, this would work. Somebody would have a story, but they hadn't written a word of it, or very little of it. And so I would have them tell it to me, and I would record it on my computer using a program. And then I would send that off to a human transcriber.
Okay.
And normally a professional transcriber takes about 3 hours to transcribe 1 hour of a 2-person conversation. If it gets to be 3 people, then it gets harder because you can't figure out always who's talking. But a 3-to-1 ratio. And she was charging about $35 an hour. So it could get pretty pricey. But one day a client came to me and he said, I'm going to transcribe it myself. And I said, oh my goodness. I said to myself, it's going to take months. No, he transcribed the whole 2-hour interview in 20 minutes. I said, how did you do that? He said, this program, artificial intelligence, it's called Otter AI, OTTER, like the animal, .ai for artificial intelligence. It's a program that Google rents to you for about $10 a month. You can use it nonstop. And it's got about 95% accuracy. So if you had a story or concept, you could tell it to me. We tape the thing on my computer, transcribe it with the Otter AI, and you've got it. About 1 hour of talking gives you about 40 double-spaced pages of text.
Wow.
So,
Now, what was the name of the program again?
Otter, OTTER .ai. It's a
Wow.
Google program. There's other ones out there, but that's the one I've been using since my client turned me on to it. And
Nice.
it cuts down the expense to nothing, right? The transcription expense. And you almost immediately, you just take it and put it into Microsoft Word, and you get about 40 pages an hour. Nobody can write 40 pages an hour.
That's amazing. Well, what about like the screenwriting? I know that's totally different. I was asked one time and they gave me a very short window to turn my book into a screenplay. And I didn't know how to do that. And I was seeking people. This was like last year. And one guy wanted to charge me like $3,000. Sad to say, I didn't have the $3,000 and I wanted to learn how to do it myself. And so what do people do in that case?
Turning a book into a screenplay or a stage play?
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about how they do it themselves, or what do I do?
No, you. I mean, how would a person get something like that to you to do?
Well, first of all, I have my Ph.D. in dramatic art, right? So that's my background, stage.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, my parents got divorced when I was 7. My mom moved to New York from New Jersey. I spent every weekend with her. She took me to the original productions of Oklahoma, South Pacific, Guys and Dolls, Pajama Game, you name it. I went to all those Broadway shows. So theater was always in my blood. And then I wound up doing a PhD in it later. Then I got into screenwriting after that marriage thing I mentioned earlier. So if somebody has a book, well, do they just have a concept, or they have a book already?
They have the book. Uh-huh.
Book. And they want to turn it into, say, a screenplay?
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, hopefully they have it in Microsoft Word. They send that to me. I call it, when we meet together, I call that up on the screen so they see it. Mm-hmm. And off we go. I do everything with my client. I don't do anything with the manuscript anymore like I used to, with the stuff that I used to do by pencil. I do everything with you. So you're right there. If I make a suggestion, I make it right now. You respond to it. You like it, you don't like it. We negotiate some third thing, whatever. And off we go. It's a collaboration.
Wow. And now the typesetting and all that the studio requires, it'll be set up just that way?
I actually I have Final Draft, but I almost never use it. I have Word set up for certain commands to turn things into screenplay format. Okay. Stage play format's very easy. You just put the things in caps, the names in caps over, and it's much closer to an essay. Mm-hmm. But the screenplay format's very annoying. Yeah, that's very annoying because you got the speaker 2 inches from there, and you got the other thing over there, and stage directions are over here, and so on. So usually I'll write a screenplay in stage play format because it's faster, and then you put it afterwards because the conversion is just automatic. You can do that halfway in your sleep. But the creative writing I'd rather do in stage play format because it's much faster. You don't have to stop with worrying about and all that nonsense.
Right. And the birds chirped and everyone looked over at the birds. It's a sunny night, all kinds of fun stuff. So,
it's funny you're mentioning birds because I had a client in Karachi, Pakistan. He was a doctor who was going back to his master's degree in public health. And at a university in Holland, and there was a 12-hour difference between him and me. So he would call me up and say good morning, and it would be 8 p.m. here in California, and I'd say good evening, and I would hear the birds singing outside his window at 8 a.m. in Karachi. So that you reminded me of that. The birds singing. Yeah, that was great.
Well, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back. And guys, if you have any questions for Paul, please let us know and we'll get that question answered. We'll be right back, Paul. Hang tight.
Okay.
Well, if you just tuned in, you haven't tuned in too late. You tuned into the Cammie Grayson Show, and I am speaking with the smartest man I know, and I am so proud to have Paul here on the show. As you can see from his bio, I mean, he's a writer, director, an editor, a producer. I mean, he's done films, he's done documentaries, he's done all kinds of things. Anything with words, that's what this man does. And so, okay, so we were talking about how
Cammie,
you can.
Something, Cammie. As an editor, I have to tell you something.
What?
I just saw your ad go by, and it had a typo in it.
It had a typo in it?
It had a typo in it. It said it wanted to say introducing, and it said introducting.
You know what? Let me look at that again. Hang
Yeah,
on.
go ahead. Did
Oh
you
my
see it?
gosh. Yeah, we've had this. I think we've had this for 2 weeks now. I've never noticed that. Thank you.
I saw it right away. Anyway,
Amazing. See, this is what I'm talking about. So if you write books and you need someone to help you with your writing, or if your dissertation, I mean, this is the person you need to know. And so what type of clients are you looking for, Paul?
well, as I said, I have half of my work is on the academic side, half of it's on the creative side. So people come with screenplays, novels, memoirs, poetry, newsletters, political statements of all kinds of stuff, even grant application. Goodness, I have a list that goes on for about 20 different kinds of things. But the big
Okay.
would be novel, screenplays, doctoral dissertations, and memoirs, big four.
Oh, wow. Now we have Paulette Johnson on the in the chat, and she's agreeing with. She goes, he's right, and she's she's like validating things that you've said earlier. So we didn't get to, but she didn't have an actual question. But she said he's right, and she said, I know that's right, and she says hello, and she has the same, I guess, what we were talking about at work. I guess a book at work. And so, Paulette, thank you so much for being on the show. If you have a question for Paul before he gets off, please put it in the chat and we'll let him answer it for you. Now, Paulette is actually in Dallas, Texas. And so she chimes in, and we went to school together. And so she's just been the biggest supporter that we've had here at SKST. So it's great. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, Paul. I saw some chat and I didn't want to miss it this time, like I missed the other ones.
That's okay. I lived in Waco, Texas as a teenager for a couple of years.
Did you?
Yeah, my dad got drafted into the Air Force. He just missed World War II. And so they still had the draft during Korea. So they drafted him, and off we went to Waco, Texas. We did get up to Dallas several times. My stepmother loved to shop at Neiman Marcus. But the thing that I remember, I'll never forget, is driving that 95 miles from Waco to Dallas. We never saw one tree. Now,
Really?
I'm from New Jersey. We used to see trees. We didn't see any trees from Waco to Dallas.
You know what? I've been to Waco, and I used to live in Dallas, but I don't even recall that highway having trees or anything.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
on
remember.
either 15th highway. I don't remember the name of the highway anymore.
Well,
Go.
Paulette is saying, I am trying to get on start my cookbook. And she's saying she needs advice.
Okay. I need advice. Well, I tailor whatever I do to the specifics that come in front of me from each person. I don't have any formulas, right? So people send me their manuscript. I go over stuff with them. I ask questions. I make suggestions. They ask me or tell me anything they want to. So I can't go and tell you how to do a cookbook. I may get some wonderful inspirations while we're talking together on the book. But I can't say, oh, I've done 8 cookbooks before, you should do this. Because if I do that, you're going to have a very unoriginal cookbook. I'm going to get something original out of you.
Sounds good. Well, you know what? Let Paulette know how she can get in touch with you.
Well, you want my phone number and my email address? What would you like?
Let's go with the email address. We don't want the world having your phone number.
Okay. I use the word editing, editing. I put 2 more G's on there at gmail.com. So it's editingg at gmail.com.
All right. Did you get that, Paulette? And if not, I do have it, and I can put it on the YouTube page as well, so people can grab it if they need it.
Mm-hmm.
So we know what type of clients you're looking for. We know what your capable of doing. So what's next for you?
Well, I have a screenplay out there, and I'm waiting for this agent to get over her daughter's illness so that she can look at my screenplay and tell me what she wants to do with it. So I'm very excited about that. A 90-year-old woman came to me in 1990, can you believe it, with her story about how she and a girlfriend, they were both originally from California, but they drove in a Model T Ford in 1918 from New York to California. And they had a bunch of interesting adventures along the way. And so we wrote up her story, and we were just about to send it out to magazines and whatever, and she died. And I put that project aside for about 20, 25 years until I was working with a client who writes books about cars. And I told him about it, and we wound up collaborating and turning her story into a 20-episode miniseries, TV.
Really?
Yeah, we just kept writing and writing and writing. We thought we had a feature film, but it turned out we had much more material. So we're waiting to see where that goes.
Yeah. Now, so stories like that kind of take off on their own, and they have a life of their own, right?
Are you talking about her story or my story of working with her?
Stories in general. Stories in general. If it's a good plot, good characters, I find like when I'm writing, it just goes on by itself. You know, it's just like you have to put this here, or he has to go this way. You know, I just find that my stories take a life of their own. Do you find that the case in some cases for you?
In this particular case, we had her real story to start with. We did invent a couple of episodes of things because she went right by some places that she did not do anything. For example, right by Mark Twain's sister-in-law, where Mark Twain wrote many of his famous novels. She went within a mile of there without even knowing it. So, of course, we had her stop to visit, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I went to Cornell University as an undergraduate. Cornell was 30 miles from there, too, so we threw in a Cornell episode.
Okay.
But aside from that, we pretty much stuck to the story that she told me.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Writing a novel, you're going to get inspiration of all kinds as you're writing it, and you're going to come up with stuff you never thought about at the beginning. And we did add details even in her story later because we had to fill things out. I mean, she only wrote 18 pages, and we wound up with 1,000 pages of screenplay.
That's amazing.
She never mentioned anything about stopping to get gas, plebeian things like that. Of course, you have to stop for gas when you're going 3,000 miles.
Exactly.
And I learned a lot of things about the cars of those days. For example, somebody asked me, well, what about changing the tires? I said, what do you mean changing the tires? You could go back and forth on tires several times. Turns out you couldn't. Tires only lasted 1,000 miles in those days.
Oh, wow. So it was a lot of research needed to be done, too.
We did tons of research. We couldn't move until we did research.
Wow.
What does a gas station look like in 1918? What is a pharmacy? What is a gas station? What is this or that? A restaurant look like in 1918, right?
Yeah.
The Spanish flu is a big part of our story, which they never teach about in school. I never heard of the Spanish flu. And that's the last time we had a COVID type catastrophe.
Yeah.
Right? So when COVID came, it gives our story a whole new relevance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
We didn't dream of it at the time we were writing it.
Yeah. You and she lived it. So that's amazing.
Right through the Spanish flu.
Oh, wow.
That wound up killing at least 50 million people worldwide.
Yeah. So now, was that the best, I don't know how to word it, out of all the works that you've done for other people, was that like one of the best ones, or do you have more?
That was certainly one of the best projects that I've worked on. Another one for a stage play. I don't know if you've heard of the German novelist and Nobel Prize winner Heinrich Böll, B-O with an umlaut over the 2 dots over the O-L-L. He wrote a book called The Clown, and it reminded me of my broken marriage, and I turned it into a screenplay. I sent it to him, this Nobel Prize winner, and he loved it. And so it's never been produced. He wound up dying, and I let the thing go. But that was a wonderful project. I would love to see that produced someday.
Wow. Now, do you have works that you're just sitting on right now, like a lot of things that you started but hadn't finished, or are you one of those people that have to finish everything that you start?
I'm not big on procrastination. I do once I start something, I do want to persist. You're talking about my own projects now, right?
Yes, yes.
Well, the biggest thing I'm right now is that screenplay, that TV thing. That's what I'm putting my energy into. The marketing of that. I'm not a marketer. That's one thing. I've helped my clients write letters to publishers or agents, and then I get off the bus at that point. I'm not really
Hmm.
a marketer. Once in a while, somebody will call me up and I'll say, "Well, what you're looking for is an agent's agent." I'm not an agent's agent. That's not what I principally do. Is help people get agents.
Right, right. Well, if you need us in any kind of way, if we can get the word out for any of your projects, you know how to contact me now. So we're
Great.
here to help, and so we're here for you.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're gonna go. It's been a pleasure, Paul. I want you to come back. I also want to make sure that I get some of your works because I did not get the opportunity to purchase one of your books, so that way I can have it and show it off. Normally, I like to show things off here at the studio, and I did not get that opportunity to do that. So once I get my book, I will reach back out to you and see if we can get you on for another interview.
Terrific. I'll be very happy to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an honor talking to you. And man, I'm very, very proud of you. And your age, oh my gosh, don't tell nobody that. They won't believe it because I didn't believe it. And so, any last remarks you want to leave before we go?
Any last remarks? I think you pretty much covered the basics.
Okay. Okay. And tell people how to get in contact with you again.
Okay, well, it's the email address is the word editing with three G's on the end at gmail.com. So you got lots of G's, EDITINGGG at gmail.com.
I love it. Absolutely love it. And Miss Paulette, we want to thank you for being on the show and thank you for your question. And hopefully you'll be reaching out to Paul to get that cookbook done. And she can cook, Paul. She does. You see her cooking on the Facebook when she's posting and on her YouTube. So she can really cook.
That's
And
great.
so,
Maybe some food over the internet.
yeah, right. When you see her cook, your stomach is going to be going, wish she can ship that. Because I'm in Virginia now. So like, wish she could ship that to Virginia.
Where is she? Where is she?
She's in Dallas.
Oh, that's right, Dallas. Okay.
Yeah, she's in Dallas. So, okay, guys, until next week, right here at SKST Radio, Paul, tell everyone goodbye and thank you for being on the show.
Bye bye, everybody.